Happy New Year, guys. Let's start the New Year's off right. Subscribe and hit the notification button because it's a little bell. Click on there, subscribe, because I have a lot of really interesting guests planned for this upcoming year and you won't want to miss it, I promise you. So, most of us, when we start the new year, we plan on being a better version of ourselves, whether physically getting in shape, mentally going back to school, or spiritually, asking God to help us be a better version of ourselves, to love our neighbors more, to love God more, just to be a better person. That's most of us. But the Democrat activists that run Black Lives Matter decided on New Year's Day the way to start the new year was to block traffic. And just think about that. New York has been locked down. They got this ridiculous dictator mayor that's just making life miserable for New Yorkers. So the only traffic out there is essential workers. And they decided to block these guys from going to work yesterday morning. And then what they always do is vandalize on top of that. And so they picked the historic St. Patrick Cathedral to spray paint ACAB. Now, first off, you might be saying, well, your title's a little misleading. It's Black Lives Matter, the Marxist organization that's doing it. It's not the Democrats. Well, public records show, now you can look this up yourself, that 90% of the billions of dollars that businesses donated to Black Lives Matter in 2020 went directly to Democrat candidates, including Joe Biden and other Democrats, to get them elected. And their leaders publicly endorsed and campaigned for Democrats throughout the whole country. So the Marxist organization, and that's what the three leaders that founded it calls themselves. They identify themselves as a Marxist organization. My friend Timothy Gordon was the first guy to call this out, even before I realized it, and he was fired. And then turns out that he was telling the truth. But Black Lives Matter is a Marxist organization, and that supports Democrats. They are all registered Democrats. This is a fact. So, my title is not misleading. Now, as far as what they wrote, ACAB, if you're not familiar with that acronym, it means all cops are bastards. Now, unlike the fake made-up war on women that the Democrats in the media said Romney and the Republicans were doing years ago, there's actually a real war on cops. And statistics bear this out. So in 2020, there was a 28% jump in cops killed in the line of duty, bringing that total up to a grim 210 cops. Now, according to the Washington Post, the number of unarmed black men killed by cops went down 63% in that same time period. And according to the Washington Post, in 2019, that would mean 14 unarmed black men were killed by cops. 14. And then it went down 63% from there. So you could do the math. And also during that period, 25 unarmed white people were killed by cops. Now, just because they were unarmed doesn't mean they weren't criminals. They were engaged with the cops because they broke the law. Some of them were unarmed and attacked the cops. Some of them were wrongfully killed, like George Floyd. We all agree that was a tragedy and those cops need to be punished. But the vast majority of these interactions, these people are going for the cop's gun, they're going for their taser. They're not innocent people. But the media and the Democrats exploited these tragedies, and declared war on the cops. Defund the cops was, the battle cry of the Democrats through the whole 2020 campaign. But it wasn't always like this. It wasn't always like this. I remember 9/11. The country was not divided, and the country did not hate cops. In fact, it was the total opposite. When Americans watched the New York Police Department running into the Twin Towers when everyone else was running out. And when we seen it, I think it was over 50 New York City cops died that day, many of them injured severely. And hundreds have died since then from the effects of all that smoke and everything they inhaled. When New Yorkers seen that, when the world seen that, we called New York cops heroes. After 9/11, when a New York beat cop was walking on the street, he got cheered. He got cheered. And it didn't matter if you were black, white, or Hispanic, you cheered that cop because you knew he was a hero. That's how it used to be. What changed? I'll tell you what changed in a minute. And then this country being so divided and so hateful towards each other, Republicans and Democrats, blacks and white, all this anger. It wasn't like that either. I remember at Ground Zero, President Bush was on the bullhorn. And he said, "Can you hear me in the back?" And a construction worker said, "Yeah, I can hear you." And he said, "Good, because I could hear you. And the people who did this are going to hear all of us." And the whole crowd roared and yeah. And the American flag was raised, and there was two beams that made a cross that was raised behind the president, symbolic of American values. And the whole city of New York was united. It didn't matter if you were black, white, Republican, Democrat, we were all Americans that day. And for many years after that, we stood united. I remember the first football game the New York Giants played after 9/11, all the players ran out holding American flags. Can you imagine if one of those players kneeled that day? They would have been beat up by the rest of the New York Giants, and the whole crowd would have came down and kicked the crap out of them. We were united. We knew that we were united. We loved America. We loved our cops. What changed? I'll tell you what changed. I watched it with my own two eyes. I was paying attention. When Obama ran for president, he used identity politics to get in. He divided us, blacks, whites, Hispanics, transgenders, homosexuals, and he called the other side homophobe, racist, xenophobic, and just kept name calling. And he got his coalition of all these little groups, and that got him in, and he kept it going. And he kept the hate going, and he began the war on cops. And I remember the day this Massachusetts cop got a call. He said, it was a 911 call, said, "Hey, my neighbor is on vacation and there's someone in his house." That cop went there, following protocol, told the person to come out. Didn't fire on him, didn't go in and beat him up, said, "Come on out of the house." The guy said, "I live here." He said, "I don't care, I need you to come out." I mean, come on, you don't know who that guy is. You need to come out and show me some ID. Well, it turned out to be Professor Gates, an African-American professor, a leftist, good friends with Obama, and he made a big deal saying this was racist, he was racially profiled, and all the cop was doing was trying to protect this man's property. He didn't know who the man was. He wanted the man to come out. Just show me some ID. If that happened to me, I would have thanked the cop. "Hey, thanks for looking out for my house. Good job." But instead, Obama made this a big political issue. He actually had a press conference. He actually called that cop stupid. He said that cop acted stupidly. And there's too much racial stereotyping, racial profiling by cops. And that began the war on cops. And then shortly after that, when that kid in Ferguson attacked the cop, and then his best friend said, "Oh no, he raised his hand." What is his best friend going to say? I grew up in the hood. I'm always going to lie to the cops when I'm a kid. But the media ran with that. "Oh, he raised his hand and said, 'Don't shoot.' And this mean white cop just shot it. Boom, 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 cold blood." Then that same guy admitted, he lied, that his friend attacked the cop and was trying to grab his gun. And they had 18 witnesses saying, yes, the kid attacked the cop. But that didn't stop the media, and that didn't stop the Democrats. For years, you heard the chant, "Hands up, don't shoot. Hands up, don't shoot." And people started hating cops. And then you see in New York City, Mayor de Blasio, he would not defend his cops. They're getting coffee thrown on them, buckets of hot water thrown on them, people laughing at them, and Mayor de Blasio saying, "Stand down." That's why when Mayor de Blasio went to have a press conference, every cop in New York City turned his back on him. And you've seen this in all the Democrat cities, where these Democrat leaders encourage, either they were silent or they actually encouraged violence against cops. And this is why there's a war on cops. This is why we're having our cops killed. because of these Democrats putting Americans against Americans, civilians against cops. When 99.9% of cops are good and they would give up their life for you and me. So this is another reason why every single police union in America backed Trump. Because they've seen firsthand that these Democrats not only want to defend cops, they want to kill cops. So this New Year's Eve, if you see a cop, buy them a coffee, buy them a donut, tell them you appreciate their service. You know, people come around and say, hey, thank you for your service when I wear my Navy gear. And I'm like, it was my pleasure. I was in peacetime. You need to thank these cops. They're in a war right now. They're in a real war. But I want to tell the cops out there that most Americans support you. Most Americans love you. We're praying for you. We support you. And we're going to beat this radical left-wing party called the Democrats. And things are going to go back to normal. God bless. Stay Catholic.